We begin by welcoming the ancestors and descendants. We welcome the ancestors, people who made each of us, the biological ancestors, spiritual ancestors, teachers, and guides. We welcome those who imagined and made our congregation possible, sustaining it up to this present day. We welcome the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing with the people of this land, whose bodies and spirits live on in their descendants, many of whom are members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomic Indian tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing, so that all the descendants together shall one day know full justice. With this, let us welcome the longings and hopes of all the descendants of all nations, that we might live for them today.
We welcome you to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church live stream worship service. I'm Paulette Lichtman-Panzer, and I'm happy to be your worship associate for today. Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church is a welcoming and inclusive community that seeks to create a more just and compassionate world. All are welcome here in this justice-seeking, earth-healing community of faith. You're welcome no matter whom you love, no matter your identity or heritage, no matter your beliefs or background, no matter your means or abilities. You are welcome here in this religious community. If you're new to Accotink and would like to talk more about this church, please be sure to reach out to me, our minister, Rev. William Levwood, or a member of the board.
I'm the Reverend William Levwood. My pronouns are he and him. You may have noticed that we're kind of building a new way this morning. We're trying some new things in our order of service because it's a multi-generational service, and we're excited about that. So including that our chalice lighting this morning is a new chalice lighting, and it's being offered by Naomi Tuggle.
The flaming chalice is a symbol of our UU faith. Unitarian Universalism is the church of the open mind, loving heart, and helping hands.
And now we'll have our story for all ages, which is from picture book author and illustrator Peter H. Reynolds, the book Ish.
Ish by Peter H. Reynolds. Ramon loved to draw. Anytime, anything, anywhere. One day, Ramon was drawing a vase of flowers. His brother, Leon, leaned over his shoulder. Leon burst out laughing. "What is that?" he asked. Ramon could not even answer. He just crumpled up the drawing and threw it across the room. Leon's laughter haunted Ramon. He kept trying to make his drawings look right, but they never did. After many months and many crumpled sheets of paper, Ramon put his pencil down. "I'm done." Marisol, his sister, was watching him. "What do you want?" he snapped. "I was watching you draw," she said. Ramon sneered. "I'm not drawing. Go away." Marisol ran away, but not before picking up a crumpled sheet of paper. "Hey, come back here with that!" Ramon raced after Marisol up the hall and into her room. He was about to yell, but fell silent when he saw his sister's walls. He stared at the crumpled gallery. "This is one of my favorites," Marisol said, pointing. That was supposed to be a vase of flowers, Ramon said, but it doesn't look like one. Well, it looks vase-ish, she exclaimed. Vase-ish? Ramon looked closer. Then he studied all the drawings on Marisol's walls and began to see them in a whole new way. They do look ish, he said. Ramon felt light and energized. Thinking ishly allowed his ideas to flow freely. He began to draw what he felt, loose lines, quickly springing out, without worry. Ramon once again drew, and drew the world around him. Making an ish drawing felt wonderful. He filled his journals. Tree-ish, house-ish, boat-ish, afternoon-ish, fish-ish, sun-ish. Ramon realized he could draw ish feelings too. Peace-ish, silly-ish, excited-ish. His ish art inspired ish writing. He wasn't sure if he was writing poems, but he knew they were poem-ish. Ponder. Pond, ponder, dream yonder. Pond, pond, yond, yond. Gleam, wander. Ramon. One spring morning, Ramon had a wonderful feeling. It was a feeling that even ish words and ish drawings could not capture. He decided not to capture it. Instead, he simply savored it. And Ramon lived ishfully ever after. The Endish.
Hi, my name is Allie Mills, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Today, I'm going to try my hand at making an ish drawing with you, like the one from the story we just listened to. So if you want to grab a piece of paper and a pencil, some crayons, markers, whatever you want to get started, you can take your paper and you can either divide it up into sections if you want to make a lot of little ish drawings, or you can use a whole sheet of paper like I'm going to do. Also, don't be afraid to tear it and share one with somebody next to you who may not have a piece of paper. So what I did was first pick something for inspiration. So I chose these flowers, like flowers in the vase from the story. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with my vase. What does it mean to be ish? What is something ish? If I said this is vase-ish, what does the ish mean? It means it looks a little bit like something, right? This looks a little bit like a vase. I'm going to draw a flower. I used to have kids who would be in my class and they would say, I want to draw a flower, but I don't know how to draw it. Or I would say, why don't you try drawing it? And they would say, I don't know how to. I don't know how to do that. Or they would come up to me sometimes and say, look at my drawing. It's supposed to be a flower, but it doesn't really look like it. But now we can say, well, it looks flower-ish. It looks vase-ish, right? Doesn't have to be exactly like the flower that I'm looking at. It's pretty, it looks flower-ish to me. And I think if you make something and it's a little ish, that you should be pretty proud of that too. Here's my flower-ish. I think it looks a little flower-ish. I asked some of my kids to come on and draw with me, but they weren't comfortable with it. But they did tell me that I could share some of their artwork with them. So here's my flower-ish and my vase-ish. And I'm going to share some other ones with you too that I think are really cute. They should be proud of. Here's one of my daughters. She made a pumpkin. It's pretty pumpkinish, I think. And here's another pumpkin that she made. They're both pretty pumpkinish. And she is definitely very proud of them, as she should be. I have another drawing that my 9-year-old son made. He was working on a comic strip, but I thought it was pretty perfect for our ish because it's pretty house-ish. That's a monkey in a banana car, and that's pretty banana car-ish if I've ever seen one. And of course, tree-ish. So lots of things can be ish, right? We can have ish feelings. Like this morning I woke up, I was pretty tired-ish. And now it's getting mid-morning. I haven't eaten anything and I'm feeling kind of hungry-ish. So there's lots of different ishes, right? You can make an ish drawing. You can write something that might be a little ish. Revlev, how do you feel? Are you a little hungry-ish or tired-ish or excited-ish this morning?
Yes, Allie, I'm feeling excited-ish. I always feel excited when I'm leading a service and also a little nervous-ish. So whatever you're feeling, you can put that down with your ish art. You can draw whatever you want, whether it's a boat-ish or a house-ish or peace-ish or sad-ish. So I encourage you to continue your ish art throughout the service. And I'm going to talk now about ish houses. Well, they're not actually called ish houses, but they're ish-ish. Let me get to it. Alejandro Aravena is a Chilean architect who won the prestigious Pritzker Prize in 2002. Aravena is known for his socially conscious building projects that attempt to break down economic inequality in urban areas. That means he works on what's known as affordable housing. So building on the ideas of others before him, Aravena's architecture firm, Elemental, have been pioneers in the designing and building of what's known as incremental housing. In other words, ish houses, or as I like to call them, half-full houses. Here's the idea. Give a low-income family half a house that has all the basics a family needs. A bathtub, bathroom with a bathtub, a kitchen, regular-sized rooms. In other words, a full half house. And for the other half of the house, Elemental builds a frame, complete with all the necessary components, such as concrete, foundations, plumbing, and electricity, to make it easy for the family to expand the house, to build themselves the other half of the house, designing it the way they want to, on the budget and the timetable that's doable for them. You saw an example of these half-full houses in the slides accompanying the opening hymn, an image of a community building project known as Villa Verde in Constitucion, Chile. Now, this approach solves a few problems. First, rather than building small, low-income housing with no room for expansion, Elemental has provided low-income housing that's easily expandable to a larger, effectively middle-class home. So rather than trapping a low-income family in low-income housing that's ultimately inadequate to their long-term needs, they've created a pathway out of poverty by providing a house that can be built upon over time. Second, rather than providing monotonous low-income housing that all looks the same and is disconnected from the personality of the families or their cultural heritage, you've left half a house to be built to their desires, allowing them to incorporate their own preferences into their homes. The third problem is that in 2010, 10, it was estimated that the urban population in the developing world will double by 2030. The implications of which are staggering. One is that we have 20 years to build as much urban housing as was built in the past 6,000 years, or only 10 more years now. Half-full houses are one way to meet this daunting reality with a sustainable, equitable solution that honors low-income people's cultural identities and empowers them to design and build houses that serve their unique wants and needs. Our outreach collection recipient for this month is VOICE, which is an acronym for Virginians Organized for Interfaith Community Engagement. And in addition to organizing for the statewide funding of new mental health crisis centers, VOICE is advocating for the creation of more affordable housing. On their website, VOICE points out that a teacher, a firefighter, a nurse, or a police officer cannot afford the cost of the average home in Northern Virginia. And therefore, many people trade long, stressful commutes and time away from their families for housing they can afford. Even so, 1 in 3 households throughout the state of Virginia are cost burdened, meaning they pay more than 30% of their income towards their housing. So there are some Virginians who don't have any housing, and many more Virginians for whom housing just isn't affordable. Their housing isn't affordable for them. They have to give up basic amenities because of the high cost of that housing. Or in other words, many people don't even have a half full house. So what would it look like to organize and advocate for affordable housing for all? One way is to join with your fellow Accotinkers in supporting the work of VOICE. You'll have an opportunity to do that financially later in the service, but equally as important, possibly even more important, is having significant numbers of you showing up at VOICE actions, like the gubernatorial forum VOICE is hosting on the afternoon of October 3rd. Contact Dottie Smith or Susie Porth if you're interested in participating in that action on October 3rd. At that event, VOICE will encourage both gubernatorial candidates to commit to supporting adequate funding for mental health crisis centers and affordable housing. People power is the leverage VOICE uses to encourage or even pressure local and state leaders to do the right thing. The more people at the action, the more leverage VOICE has to encourage officials to do the right thing. Now, the half-full house is also a metaphor. That means we can apply it to more than just our thinking and doing in relation to affordable housing. You might ask yourself, what's my half-full house? What does that look like in my life? Let's start with the full half of the house. What do you need in your life right now to have your basic needs met? What's your full half of the house look like? Do you need a good night's sleep, regular exercise, supportive community? For this, focus on the full half of the house that's within reach. So if you're a busy parent, regular exercise might not be an option right now. And enough sleep might look like squeezing in a 20-minute nap in the afternoon before you pick up the kids from school, if you're lucky. You can also ask yourself, what does the full half of the house look like in this moment in the pandemic? Of course, all of us want to be able to participate in in-person events, but given the necessary constraints provided by the wildfire spread of the Delta variant, what does that look like for you right now? Masking? Only outdoor meetups? Mask off indoors, but only with a small group of friends and family you've designated as your pandemic pod? Zoom worship like this? What's your full half of the house at this moment in the pandemic? And how can you best show respect, kindness, and care to those whose full half house looks different than yours? who are either taking more risk than you or less. Whatever your circumstances, you can have a full half house right now. Right now, and just about always. Not always, perhaps, but almost always. So I encourage you to think about and define for yourself what your full half house is, and then choose to focus your energies there, especially if your energies are depleted or stretched right now. Nancy Stark Smith, may her memory be for a blessing, pioneer of the dance form contact improvisation, who gave us our definition of failing successfully last week, also has full half house wisdom to offer us. Nancy was known to encourage dancers not to give 110%, cautioning, in fact, that giving 110% is a recipe for injury. Instead, she advised giving 100% of whatever amount of energy you have. So if you have only 10% of your full energy reserves at your disposal in any given moment, focus on giving 100% of that 10%. I think that's a full half house practice that we can all put into practice in our lives right now. Join me in a time of prayer and contemplation. We begin, Spirit of Life, sharing our sorrows with you. We lift up sick family members and ask those family members to be held in the embrace of love and community. We lift up this morning, as we talk about affordable housing, with sadness and with outrage, the deaths of immigrants in New York due to inadequate housing. We lift up our concern this morning about all those in Louisiana without power. We lift up our worry and our outrage about the change to abortion laws in Texas and its implications for our country. We lift up the passing of AUUC member Tuppence Blackwell. We're sad for her loss and grateful and joyful for the life that she lived and shared with so many in this community. We make it our vow to treasure the special moments in our lives, to not take them for granted, to celebrate visits with family in beautiful places, whether it's on the beach or in a forest or surrounded by each other on couches and chairs and living rooms. We celebrate especially when multiple generations of people can come together in fellowship in their home, among families and among friends. And we know that there are many other joys to lift up, joys of simple things. We lift up those joys as well. Spirit of life and love. We lift up also the joy of our pets and the sadness when we lose those pets. For all of the joys in this community, may they be held. May we be there for each other in our sorrow and in our joy. Amen, 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 and blessed be. I invite you to continue in a time of meditation. We begin with a grounding meditation so that we can settle into that full half house in our bodies. So take a deep breath in and a breath out. And notice whatever parts of your body are in contact with something else. Your thighs on the chair you're sitting in, your feet on the ground, perhaps your arms against the armrests. Notice and bring your attention to those places where you're being supported, where you're grounding into the floor or into your chair. Just take a moment to give your attention to those parts of your body. In any moment, you can do this. No matter how scattered you might feel or caught up in a challenging emotion, you can always bring your attention back to your groundedness in and with the earth, through your feet, through your body. Breathe in and notice those parts of your body. And then we're going to extend this practice with a heaven and earth meditation, or a sky and earth meditation from Rabbi Shefa Gold. So you breathe in to the center of your body, and as you breathe out, breathe, exhaling into the earth as if there are roots reaching down, and then pull the energy back up to your center as you breathe in. And then this time when you breathe out, send the energy up towards the sky, or like branches reaching up. And as you breathe in again, bring it back into your center. We're going to continue like this for about a minute or so. Breathing, exhaling down into the earth, and then pulling the energy back up to your center. Exhaling up into the sky, and then breathing, pulling that back into your center. Down into the earth, pulling back up into your center. Up into the sky as you exhale, and then pulling the energy back to your center as you inhale. And if you feel like you need more grounding, more rootedness, you can repeat breathing down into the earth, up into your center, down into the earth, up into your center. Or if you're in a moment of growing into that other half of the house, expanding, you can repeat the breathing, exhaling up to the sky and back to your center, up to the sky and back to your center, up to the sky and back to the center. And in this way, you can modulate your energy, grounding yourself when you need grounding, or lifting your energies when you need to lift your energies. So let's just repeat one last time, breathing down into the earth. You might be in a different cycle on your breath. That's okay. Breathing into your center, up into the sky one last time. And then as you breathe in, bringing the energy back into your center, and noticing again the grounding we began with, your feet on the floor, your thighs on your chair. That brings our meditation to a close this morning. Up, 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 up points the spire of the steeple, but God's work isn't done by God, it's done by people. Right from the beginning of this song from Ani DeFranco, she makes it clear you can believe in God or not, because the work is up to people just like you and me. I'm confident that's something that we all agree about here, that the work is up to people just like you and me. And even when the song seems the most like it's referring to something like God in the chorus, when it says, just when you think that you've got enough, enough grows, and everywhere that you go in life, enough knows. it's clear that enough isn't up above us, that it's around us, surrounding us perhaps, or connecting us. God's work isn't done by God, remember? It's done by people. The half full house expands, but not further up into the sky, but rather to the left or the right. Half full house growth is the kind of growth that recognizes that we keep learning, that we never fully reach mastery, that we're always engaged in a practice that shows that more is possible, that we never get all the way there. That in fact, the closer we get, the more we learn that half of learning how to play is learning what not to play, learning to sing just enough that the air around us moves, to make music like mercy that gives what it is and has nothing to prove. So, what does that look like in your life? If you're inhabiting your full half house, giving 100% of the 10% you have to give in any given moment, what does it look like to grow into the other half? What does it mean for enough to grow? When you have a little extra time or energy to spare, how do you want to use it? And what does it look like to do that? Maybe it's choosing to dance for 20 minutes or for 5 minutes rather than checking the news on your phone one more time. Maybe it's giving more time and energy to social justice advocacy, showing up for that event on October 3rd, that Voice, as part of Voice. Or it can be spending more time engaging in spiritual practices, or focusing on being more playful with your children or grandchildren in the time that you are with them. Or it might be giving a little more affection or support to your spouse. Or maybe it's venturing out on some sort of mini adventure to a museum or a concert, a hike in the park, or a picnic at a playground. Now, in my imagining of the half full house, as a metaphor anyways, we actually want half the house to remain somewhat empty, to be a liminal space of possibility, never fully finished, always malleable. Let's sit with the words of the chorus again for a moment. Just when you think that you've got enough, enough grows. And everywhere that you go in life, enough knows. There is enough, and there will be enough. That's a powerful, we could say, theological statement. In a faith-based community organizing coalition similar to Voice that I was involved in Tallahassee, a big part of their framework was grounded in the biblical assertion that there is enough and there will be enough. This they contrasted with what they called Pharaoh's narrative, a narrative of scarcity, of oppressing others to get enough for yourself. In contrast, in this way of reading the Bible, which is referred to as reading from the margins, reading it from the perspective of oppressed peoples, this community organizing coalition emphasized God's narrative as one of abundance, of there being enough for everyone, of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, to quote our second principle. Remember, God's work isn't done by people. Love's work isn't done by God, it's done by people. So what's it like to live as if there's enough? There's a full half house, and also that there will be enough. There is room to grow into the other half of the house. Towards the end of Ani DeFranco's song, she says this. She crawls out on a limb and begins to build a home. And it's enough just to look around and know that she's not alone. Going back to our image of incremental housing is built in neighborhoods. And one can imagine that at least some of the time, neighbors are likely helping each other with their building expansions. So what does that look like in your life? And what does that look like in this congregation and in our society? Neighbors helping each other to get a full half house or to expand the other half. I would say from what I've seen that is precisely what this congregation is about. That as a congregation, you can both rest in that full half house of how you've already supported each other, especially how you've supported each other through the pandemic, and also how you're already working for justice. And you can continue to grow into the other half of the house, learning how to better support each other, how to deepen your spiritual growth and development, and how to work for justice in new ways as well. The half full house has a full half, and an enough grows half. What does the full half side of your house look like? What are the basic features you need to survive and thrive, giving 100% of the 10% you have to give in any given moment? And what does the other half look like, the empty or sometimes empty half that you can grow into? What are your dreams for yourself and the world? Dreams that you can move into as you grow and develop as a human being, journeying together with other human beings toward collective liberation and wholeness. We need both the full half house and the enough grows half of the house. If we're just striving all the time, giving 110% and never fully reaching our goals, that's a recipe for injury, both physical injury and moral injury. We need to be able to rest in our full half house. On the other hand, if we're only resting in our full half house, that isn't sufficient either. That's a recipe for complacency, a complacency that often supports unjust structures in the world. We need enough, and we need for enough to grow. Half of learning how to play is learning what not to play. Learning the spaces we leave have their own things to say, and trying to sing just enough the air around us moves, so that we make music like mercy that gives what it is and has nothing to prove. May you live in a full half house and live ever more fully into a half full house for yourself and for all beings. May it be so, and may we be among those who make it so. Amen, 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 and blessed be.
Though we extinguish our chalice flame, we carry within us what we kindled, the light of inspiration, warmth of compassion, and the fire of commitment. May we bring these gifts into our lives and share them radiantly out in the world. I invite you now to join me in our community blessing with these words of David Bumbaugh. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity.